The movie begins with a tense scene of Kang Jae-kyung, a young man, locked in a fierce fight with a group of thugs in an abandoned building. Suddenly, the sound of sirens pierces the air as the police arrive to stop the violence and arrest everyone involved, including Jae-kyung. As news of his arrest spreads, his family is quickly informed, and they quickly take action, hiring the skilled attorney, Yu, to go to the police station and secure his release. As the night goes on, Jae-kyung celebrates his 18th birthday at a flashy nightclub with his closest friends. He wears a wide grin, clearly pleased that he has officially reached adulthood and will now inherit his family's significant fortune. Not too far from the location of Jae-kyung's extravagant birthday celebration, a young woman named Choi Eun-hwan is wandering through a bustling market in search of someone. Eventually, she makes her way to a small restaurant where she attempts to speak with the owner, a woman named Shin Jung-lim. However, she doesn't seem interested in listening to Eun-hwan and instead dismisses her with a coldness that suggests a lack of familiarity. In fact, Eun-hwan is hardly given a chance to speak before she is rudely and abruptly shown the door. Being mistaken for being accountable for being pregnant by the owner's son, she is left dejected and sad. After that, Eun-hwan wanders through the streets until she comes across a luxurious 5-star hotel. Here, she sees Jae-kyung exiting the hotel, fresh from his nightclub celebration, and she follows him as if they were already friends. Unfortunately, it becomes clear that he sees her only as a low-level entertainer, and he carelessly hands her some money before telling her to leave. At that time, Eun-hwan is left feeling even more sad and dejected, having been dismissed and kicked out twice in one night by people who haven't even given her a chance to speak her mind. The sun had just risen over the horizon, casting a warm glow over the hotel room as Jae-kyung woke up. Jae-kyung couldn't believe it. He immediately marched over to Eun-hwan and let loose a string of scolding. He couldn't understand why she would still be there after everything that had happened the night before. Soon after, she left the hotel. It wasn't long before Yu arrived at the hotel to meet Jae-kyung. He had some important news. There would be a family meeting soon, where the will of Jae-kyung's late father would be read. Hearing that, Jae-kyung was filled with mixed emotions as he joined his family and lawyers in the meeting room. He had never been particularly close with his father, but the thought of inheriting his family's wealth still made his heart race. When the will was finally read, Jae-kyung was in for a surprise. His father had left him all of the family's property, but with a catch. To inherit it, he would have to attend Boram High School, the remote school located in the rural area of Gangwon-do, far from the bustling capital. If he failed to complete his studies there, he would only inherit 0.1% of the family's wealth. Hearing that, Jae-kyung grudgingly accepts the terms of his grandfather's will and sets off for the Gangwon-do area by taking an economy-class bus. Upon arriving at the address for his new residence, Jae-kyung immediately walks into the house without bothering to greet anyone. Inside, he finds a middle-aged man named Kim Hyun-cheol who has known him since childhood. Jae-kyung, being arrogant, assumes Hyun-cheol is simply a gardener and orders him to fix the broken door. Feeling the need to pick up a few essentials, Jae-kyung heads to a nearby convenience store. At that place, he runs into Eun-hwan, who is working a part-time job. Seeing her again makes him curious about her true identity. As he goes to pay for his purchases using his credit card, Eun-hwan informs him that it has been blocked. Frustrated, Jae-kyung is forced to pay in cash. As Eun-hwan hands him his change, he rudely refuses it, remarking that her hands are dirty due to the nail polish she is wearing. Later that night, Hyun-cheol comes to Eun-hwan's aid, helping her clean her nails and repainting them with a more attractive color. Jae-kyung's harsh words and actions had embarrassed her, yet Hyun-cheol helped lift her spirits. The following day, as Jae-kyung makes his way to his new school, Boram High, he receives a call from Yu, who informs him that he will only inherit his family's wealth if he gets expelled from the school. This information causes him to immediately start scheming to get himself kicked out. Upon arriving at school, Jae-kyung heads straight to the principal's office, only to be shocked when he discovers that Hyun-cheol, the man he met yesterday, is actually the headmaster of Boram High. At that time, Hyun-cheol greets him warmly and calls for his homeroom teacher to give him a proper introduction to the other students. As classes begin, Jae-kyung quickly becomes the center of attention due to his good looks. However, he doesn't seem interested in socializing with his classmates. Instead, he keeps thinking about how he can get expelled from school to claim his inheritance. During recess, Jae-kyung comes up with an idea and calls Myung-sik, a classmate with a muscular physique, to meet him on the roof of the school building. Upon Myung-sik's arrival, Jae-kyung beat him up to get both of them expelled. However, instead of anger, Myung-sik's family expresses gratitude to him for helping their son become a more assertive and confident person. They even invite him to a banquet and offer him food parcels and a flashlight as tokens of appreciation. As Jae-kyung makes his way home, he is still grappling with the small village's unfamiliar customs and ways of thinking. However, his thoughts are soon interrupted as he comes across a narrow and dark path. Suddenly, Eun-hwan pops up from behind, startling him, and Jae-kyung, hesitant to walk alone, decides to follow her. Eun-hwan, wanting to play a prank on him, throws her flashlight into the bushes and runs off, leaving him alone. Back at school, Eun-hwan is seen leading a class meeting to prepare for a play that is required for their graduation. Jae-kyung, who arrives late, is assigned the role of a maidservant, much to his dismay, and he initially refuses the part. After school, Jae-kyung calls his friends from the city and borrows money in hopes of leaving the school and enjoying a more luxurious lifestyle. He even goes to Hyun-cheol's office to offer him money in exchange for expelling him from school. But to his surprise, Hyun-cheol declines the offer and advises him to reconsider his actions. Disappointed, Jae-kyung takes back the money and leaves the office. As he returns home, Jae-kyung is met by his friends from the city who came in luxury cars, inviting him to hang out at a cafe in the Gangwon-do area. The students at Boram High School are amazed and envious as they witness the opulent cars driven by his city friends. However, while they were on the way to another cafe, their car runs out of gas and they call for a gas seller. To their surprise, Eun-hwan arrives as the refueling officer, but his friends scold her when she refuses to accept a tip from them. Jae-kyung, feeling remorse for her treatment, tries to defend her and asks his friends to let her go. The next morning, it rains in Gangwon-do, and Jae-kyung skips school instead of wandering around the village. As he walks, he comes across an orphanage, which reminds him of his own past, when his parents died in an accident. Worried that Jae-kyung not in school, Eun-hwan decides to go check on him at his house, and upon arriving, she finds him looking pale and listless. Before he faints, he calls her mother. When he comes to, some of his other friends have also come to check on him. After they leave, Eun-hwan takes care of Jae-kyung and cooks food for him. A few days later, Eun-hwan and her friends are seen rehearsing a dance routine for a play at the local orphanage. On that day, Jae-kyung arrives late, feigning a leg injury as an excuse to avoid practicing. Eun-hwan sees through his excuses and scolds him for being selfish. Suddenly, she doubles over in pain, clutching her chest before collapsing. Seeing that, Jae-kyung rushes her to the hospital. After Eun-hwan wakes up, the doctor and Hyun-cheol advise her to rest and not participate in the school play, but she insists on performing, despite her condition. At that time, her friends are not allowed to see her, so Jae-kyung and the others decide to go to the market to buy props for the play. There, he treated his friends, buying shopping for them and even a pair of knit gloves for Eun-hwan. One day, while at school, Jae-kyung is surprised to see Eun-hwan has come to school despite her condition. He scolds her for pushing herself too hard and gives her the knit gloves he had bought for her. Hearing that, she is touched and happily accepts the gloves, leaving him with a smile. A few days later, Eun-hwan and the rest of the group work on a plantation to earn extra money for the drama staging. Eun-hwan, noticing Jae-kyung's lack of effort, takes her wages and gives them to the others. As they travel home together, Jae-kyung can't help but stare at Eun-hwan. They drop her off at the orphanage, and he follows her out of curiosity, and discovers that Hyun-cheol is the head of the orphanage. Seeing Jae-kyung's pitying attitude, Eun-hwan tells him that she doesn't need anyone's pity because of her condition. Suddenly, he shares that he too is an orphan like her, and they start to understand each other more. As time passed, Jae-kyung and the group became more involved in helping the children at the orphanage with their studies. But suddenly, they receive news that Eun-hwan has been hospitalized again because of her worsening condition. Soon after, Jae-kyung rushes to the hospital, but he's not allowed to see her until the doctor reveals that Eun-hwan suffers from chronic heart disease. Because of her condition, the hospital limits the number of people who are allowed to see her. Upon hearing the news of Eun-hwan's worsening condition, Jae-kyung is filled with sadness and despair. A while later, her condition improves, and when she wakes up, she sees Jae-kyung sitting by her bedside, wearing a patient gown. He had pretended to have anemia so he could be hospitalized and be by her side. Knowing that, she is touched by his actions and is grateful for his presence. That night, Jae-kyung has a dream where he pleads with the doctor to save Eun-hwan's life, even though her medical expenses are extremely expensive. The doctor tells him that Eun-hwan cannot be cured and that her condition will worsen if she cannot control her emotions, particularly concerning matters of the heart. This news devastates him, and he wakes up in a panicked state, only to find Eun-hwan's bed empty. Meanwhile, Eun-hwan visits her mother, Jung-lim, at her restaurant. She is met with a cold reception until she reveals that she is Jung-lim's daughter, who was abandoned in Gangwon-do 18 years ago. There, Eun-hwan tells her mother that all she wants is to see her before she passes away because of her heart disease. Jung-lim is filled with emotion, torn between happiness at reuniting with her daughter and sadness at the news of her illness. Before she can say anything, Eun-hwan leaves. That night, Jae-kyung meets Eun-hwan at the bus stop and pleads with her to stop working. But she refuses, determined to fulfill her dream of buying a house with many windows for the children in the orphanage, as the orphanage is about to be torn down due to it being built illegally on land owned by Jae-kyung's family company. The next day, Jae-kyung rushes to Yu, determined to save the orphanage, but Yu tells him that it's too late and he's just carrying out an errand for his extended family. If Jae-kyung wants to save the orphanage, he would have to give up his inheritance and use the 0.1% of his grandfather's total wealth to buy it. At the orphanage, Eun-hwan and Hyun-cheol are seen cleaning the windows, and Eun-hwan confesses to Jae-kyung that she is happy to be close to him in her final days. On the other hand, Jae-kyung visits the doctor who treated Eun-hwan and gives him money for her treatment and medicine. He also says he wants to take care of and always accompany Eun-hwan, but the doctor forbids it, fearing that her emotions for him will worsen her condition. However, Jae-kyung says that he already knows that Eun-hwan will leave them and wants to make her happy for the rest of her life. Upon returning home, Jae-kyung saw Eun-hwan sitting on the terrace, waiting for him. She had planned to spend the night at his house, but Jae-kyung remembered the warning from her doctor and felt compelled to ask him to return to the orphanage. Despite his request, Eun-hwan was determined to stay at his house. Ultimately, he decided to leave her alone in his home. Early one morning, Jae-kyung, who had not yet returned home, called Yoo and informed him of his decision to renounce his inheritance to save the orphanage in Gangwon-do. He then made his way to the orphanage, where he watched the children as they rehearsed for a play. There, he suddenly realized that Eun-hwan, one of the children, was his childhood friend. Without hesitation, he sought out her, who was still clearly upset with him for abandoning her. Despite Eun-hwan's initial reluctance, Jae-kyung reminded her of their promise to each other when they were children. He apologized for forgetting about her and asked her to spend the rest of her life with him. After some time, she forgave Jae-kyung and agreed to spend her days with him. The next day, Eun-hwan visited Jae-kyung's house and found that he had kept their childhood photographs. They spent the day reminiscing in his room, but Eun-hwan couldn't help feeling sad that she would not have more time to spend with him. As the day came to a close, they walked through the village, where she discovered a field of dandelions. Suddenly, Eun-hwan shared with Jae-kyung her belief that if you blow the seeds of a dandelion, your wish will come true. Hearing this, he excitedly picked up and blew on the dandelions. There she also blew her own dandelions and made a wish for them to live happily together until the first snowfall of winter. From that day on, they had many happy days together. As time passed, the day of the school play at the orphanage drew near, and Jae-kyung reluctantly agreed to play the role of the servant girl to see Eun-hwan happy. Their graduation day was also approaching, so Jae-kyung and his classmates took a photograph with their homeroom teacher as a memento. However, shortly after returning home, Eun-hwan's illness worsened, and she collapsed in the bathroom. Jae-kyung, realizing she was not coming out, broke down the door and rushed to help her. Despite his efforts, her condition worsened, and she eventually lost consciousness. As autumn arrived, Jae-kyung gave Eun-hwan a special birthday surprise, despite her birthday not be for several months. He presented her with a gift in the form of a capsule which she had to open one day at a time. Out of curiosity, Eun-hwan immediately opened several capsules and found that they contained heartfelt declarations of love from Jae-kyung, which brought her to tears. Knowing this, he came into the room and asked her to open one capsule daily. Eun-hwan cried in Jae-kyung's arms, saying that she wanted to immediately open all the capsules because she was afraid she would not be able to read all of his love declarations before her time was up. The day of the play finally arrived, and Jae-kyung was backstage, asking Myung-sik to switch roles. Jung-lim was also in attendance to witness Eun-hwan's performance. However, she felt pain during the performance and had to temporarily leave the stage. Knowing this, Jae-kyung asked Eun-hwan to rest backstage, but she insisted on finishing the performance. Despite her condition, she returned to the stage, and together with him, they were able to finish the play to the audience's applause, with their wedding scene as the highlight. After the stage performance, Jae-kyung and Eun-hwan sat on a bench in the orphanage park, enjoying the cool night air. Eun-hwan, leaning against his shoulder, said she was sleepy and wished to sleep for just 3 minutes as the first snow of winter fell. A few days later, the graduation ceremony for Boram High School was held. During the ceremony, Hyun-cheol presented a friendship award posthumously to Eun-hwan, who had passed away while sitting on the park bench with Jae-kyung. At that time, Jae-kyung could only look on sadly at the empty bench beside him until he met with Yoo, who informed him that he had officially inherited all of his grandfather's legacy due to his significant personal growth. At the end of the movie, it is shown that Jae-kyung is in front of the Gangwon-do orphanage, where the renovation takes place. The new orphanage building is bigger with many windows, like Eun-hwan's dream when she was alive. The moral that can be learned from this movie is that we should cherish and appreciate all people close to us.